So if I told you that the way you just reached for your coffee cup is basically broadcasting your deepest, unresolved childhood traumas to the rest of the room, you would probably think I was crazy.
Right, you'd think, I'm just picking up a mug.
Exactly. You'd say my brain says drink, my arm extends, I grab the handle. It's just a mechanical action.
But today we're looking at a framework that proves that seemingly mundane movement is, well, it's anything but simple.
Welcome to another deep dive. We have a really wild mission today. It's custom tailored for those of you who just love gaining this thorough cross-disciplinary knowledge without grounding in raw data.
Oh, definitely. We're decoding this highly conceptual, stunningly ambitious visual presentation from a company called Connexa Formation. It's often referred to as Episode L.
And the core of Episode L is essentially this manifesto, right? It's called 50 Visionaries, One Truth.
Yeah, and the premise is just staggering. Connexa argues that 50 of the absolute greatest minds in human history all found the same truth.
We're talking painters, physicists, novelists, choreographers.
Right. They all independently discovered different fragments of the exact same ultimate truth about human movement.
And here is the truly wild part for you listening. Connexa claims they've synthesized all 50 of these distinct historical visions into one single tool.
A tool to measure and optimize athletic performance in real time. It's wild.
Connecting the dots between art history, psychoanalysis, and cutting-edge sports biomechanics, that is a huge leap.
It is, but their foundational thesis is actually beautiful in its clarity. They state that human movement is the most complete manifestation of what a human being is.
Like what they've lived through and what they can become.
Exactly. But the crucial distinction they make is that movement is the only art form that recreates itself at every single moment.
Because, a painting is static once the paint dries.
Right, and a sculpture is frozen in marble forever, but a physical gesture. It's born, it lives, and it dies in a fraction of a second.
Only to be recreated, probably with tiny variations the next time you move.
Which means, to understand how Connexa turns that high-level philosophy into measurable data, we first have to look at how these historical visionaries deconstructed the body.
So let's start with the visual artists. The presentation brings up Jackson Pollock, which surprised me at first.
Oh, absolutely, because when most of us picture Pollock, we just see a guy frantically throwing and dripping paint onto a canvas on the floor.
Right, it just looks like complete chaos.
But what Connexa extracts from Pollock is the revelation that the gesture itself reveals the unconscious. He wasn't just making a random mess.
He was systematically bypassing his conscious, calculating brain.
Precisely. The literal physical trajectory of his arm, the velocity of the throw, the angle of his wrist, that movement was a direct, unfiltered map of his internal emotional state.
So the kinetic energy he transferred to the canvas was governed entirely by the unconscious. That's fascinating.
It really is. And then you contrast that fluid chaos with the scientific rigor of someone like Leonardo da Vinci.
Oh, Da Vinci gave us the Vitruvian Man.
Exactly, which wasn't just a neat sketch. It was this radical claim that the universe's mathematical ratios are embedded directly into our joints and levers.
Right. Da Vinci established that sacred geometry governs all human movement.
Which naturally brings us to the psychological dimension of this framework. Sigmund Freud enters the equation here to bridge that gap.
Bridging the mind and the physical geometry of the body.
Freud argued that the unconscious mind doesn't just dictate our random gestures, it actively creates unseen physical blocks.
Wait, like actual physical tension?
Yeah. If you hold internal trauma, anxiety, or hesitation, it doesn't just live in your brain. It manifests as a literal structural block in your body.
It literally changes the way your fascia holds tension, which alters your stride or your reach.
Exactly.
Okay, let's pause and really unpack this. Because basically we are saying our bodies are performing this wildly complex, emotionally driven, geometrically precise solo.
Like an improvisational jazz performance that we aren't even aware we're playing.
Right. But here's my pushback from a practical standpoint. If Pollock and Freud are right, how do we fix it?
What do you mean?
Like, if our movements are deeply governed by the unconscious mind and these unseen emotional blocks, how can any athlete consciously fix a movement they don't even know they're making?
That is the million-dollar question.
You can't fix a blind spot if your brain is actively hiding it from you.
And that paradox is the exact problem Connexa set out to solve. Because if the truth is hidden deep in your unconscious, conscious effort alone is completely insufficient to change it.
Right. Your nervous system is too adept at finding workarounds.
So to make the unconscious conscious, Conexa couldn't just tell athletes to, think harder. They had to take these massive chaotic theories and organize them.
Into a strictly structured, measurable system, which brings us to the master matrix.
Yes. Conexa categorizes these 50 historical insights into 4 highly structured conceptual pillars.
It's less like an instruction manual and more like a prism, really.
Refracting the white light of abstract art and philosophy into distinct, measurable colors of biomechanical data.
So the first 2 pillars are dedicated to the external physical reality of movement. They're titled Balance in Space and Rhythm and Momentum.
Right. And to understand how we occupy space, Conexa leans heavily on Rudolf Laban, this legendary movement theorist.
I found Laban's inclusion super fascinating because he essentially created an architectural blueprint for the body.
He created the notation of space. It was a visual language, a complex system of symbols used to document every possible direction and dynamic of human movement.
Because before Laban, dance and movement were entirely ephemeral. They existed and then vanished.
Exactly. Laban figured out how to code the physical space around the body into a readable syntax. Conexa uses this exact concept to build their spatial mapping.
Wow. And for rhythm and momentum, they pull in ballet legend Vaslav Nijinsky.
Famed for his mastery of gravity.
Right. His leaps seem to defy physics, like he was hovering. So Conexa extracts how he manipulated time and momentum, looking at the exact millisecond sequencing of his muscle contractions.
Those first 2 pillars lay the mechanical groundwork. But the real paradigm shift happens when they move to pillar 3 and 4.
Strength and surpassing limits, and memory and the unconscious.
This is where they transition from external mechanics to the internal drivers of movement.
And this is an incredibly eclectic synthesis. Looking at this list, under strength and surpassing limits, they group Charles Darwin right next to Bruce Lee.
I know, it sounds bizarre on paper.
Yeah, how do evolutionary biology and martial arts connect biomechanically?
Well, consider the mechanism of adaptation. Darwinian theory dictates that an organism physically restructures itself based on environmental pressures.
The body adapts to survive.
Right, and Bruce Lee approached combat with a similar plasticity. His power emptiness wasn't just mystical, it was a physical state of supreme muscular relaxation.
By emptying the body of preconceived tension, he allowed his nervous system to instantly adapt to any incoming force.
Conexa bridges Darwin and Lee by analyzing how neuroplasticity lets a single muscle fiber rewire itself when the correct environmental pressure is applied.
Okay, that makes perfect sense when you break down the neuroplasticity of it. But then we get to pillar 4, memory and the unconscious.
That's where things get really deep.
Honestly, I was genuinely thrown for a loop reading this part. Choreographers like Pina Bausch make sense, but Ernest Hemingway and Marcel Proust.
Right, classic novelists.
How do 2 authors of classic literature have anything to do with athletic biomechanics?
It seems completely disjointed until you look at the psychological mechanisms those specific writers uncovered. Conexa uses Hemingway to represent the iceberg of performance.
Oh, like the famous iceberg theory from his writing style?
Applied to the human body, yeah. Hemingway believed that in a story, you only show the top 1/8 of the iceberg above the water.
The real truth, the emotional weight, is the 7/8 hidden beneath the surface.
Conexa applies this directly. The 1/8 you see above the water is the athlete running the sprint or throwing the baseball. The 7/8 hidden beneath is automated neural patterning, fascial tension, unhealed microtraumas.
Unconscious emotional blocks.
Ah.
So the visible output depends entirely on an invisible foundation. I love that. And Proust, he's famous for writing about memory.
Proust represents what Conexa defines as the involuntary memory of the body.
Like his famous Madeleine cake triggering childhood memories.
Yes. The memory wasn't accessed consciously. The physical sensation brought it forth involuntarily.
So applied to movement, Conexa is saying when an athlete hits perfect physical alignment, that feeling triggers a neuromuscular recall.
Precisely. The body has its own memory bank that bypasses the conscious brain entirely. Once an athlete feels that perfect geometry, the sensory input triggers an involuntary physical memory.
Allowing them to repeat the perfection without overthinking every joint angle. Okay, so we've mapped out this massive, gorgeous philosophical framework. Da Vinci's geometry, Laban's notation of space, Hemingway's iceberg, Proust's involuntary memory.
It's a lot to take in.
It really is. But the burning question for you listening is, how does this massive intellectual exercise actually help a person moving in real life?
Right.
Because the presentation makes it explicitly clear with a stern warning. Kinexa is not a fitness app.
It's not about counting repetitions or estimating calories burned. They define Kinexa as an advanced analytical instrument based on observation, integration, and measurement.
Because a track coach or a physical therapist doesn't have the time to read 7 volumes of Proust while watching a client run on a treadmill.
Exactly. They need to help the person in front of them right now. So Kinexa acts as the ultimate translator.
It filters all this abstract brilliance through advanced technology, probably computer vision tracking kinematics, and maybe electromyography for muscle electrical activity.
Yeah, the presentation outlines a specific vision for coaches. The system ingests all that data and translates Leonardo's geometry and Freud's blocks into plain English alerts on a screen.
Like a coach might see an alert that says, this knee is compensating.
Or, this antagonist muscle is not relaxing enough.
And just to clarify for everyone listening, an antagonist muscle needs to relax so the primary muscle can do its job. Like your triceps letting go so your biceps can curl.
Right. If the tricep stays tense, it creates a literal physical drag on the movement. The system might also alert the coach that a movement pattern is not automated.
Or that fatigue is distorting the geometry.
It sees the 7/8 of the iceberg that the naked human eye simply cannot process in real time. It measures millisecond delays.
But what is equally fascinating is the vision for the athlete. Kinexa isn't just a dashboard for the coach. It radically alters the sensory experience of the athlete.
And they use these incredible metaphors to describe it. The first capability is called Beethoven's ear.
Right. Beethoven composed these masterpieces while profoundly deaf. He couldn't hear his own creations externally.
And athletes are frequently in the exact same position physically because of proprioception.
Our nervous system's ability to sense our body's position in space.
Exactly. We develop blind spots, we learn bad habits, and over time, our brain just accepts those bad habits as normal.
You think your back is straight, but you're actually leaning 10 degrees to the left. You literally cannot feel the error.
Kinexa becomes that external ear. By showing the athlete their real-time data, it allows them to objectively see their own physical truth, completely bypassing their flawed internal sensors.
It also provides Proust's Madeline, making that involuntary memory accessible, and Nietzsche's promise.
Which they define as revealing what an athlete truly is beyond their learned limits.
Because if physical limits are largely neurological safeguards, learned limitations, they can be unlearned once you clearly see them on a screen.
And finally, it provides Darwin's guarantee. Evolutionary adaptation is mathematically guaranteed if the training stimulus is targeted correctly.
Okay, I want to push back on this again, though. Looking at the long-term implications.
Sure.
If this technology is doing all the heavy lifting, acting as Beethoven's ear, and analyzing every micro-angle for you, is there a danger that an athlete will stop listening to their own body internally?
That they run the risk of becoming a biological robot.
Exactly, just waiting for a screen to tell them their antagonist muscle is tense.
That is the inherent risk with any biofeedback technology. But the source text actually addresses this. Kinexa isn't trying to replace internal awareness.
They want to unlock it permanently.
Yes. The entire point of referencing Bruce Lee's relaxation and Mozart's deliberate practice is to reunite the mind and the body. The final tagline in the presentation captures this perfectly.
Every repetition reveals the truth.
The technology is functioning purely as a mirror. It reflects the unconscious blocks and the geometric flaws with such objective clarity that the athlete can finally, consciously feel them.
So the technology is meant to be a temporary bridge, not a permanent crutch.
Exactly. Once you see the habit externally, you can locate the feeling internally. Once you can feel it, you can control it. The screen just turns the lights on in a dark room.
Takes the invisible and makes it measurable so you can master it. Man, what a journey this deep dive has been.
It covers a massive amount of ground.
Let's recap the terrain we've covered for everyone listening. We started by looking at Jackson Pollock throwing paint to map his unconscious, and Da Vinci searching for the sacred geometry of the joints.
We explored how trauma creates physical blocks, courtesy of Freud.
We moved through a matrix of 50 historical visionaries, combining Laban's spatial notation with Charles Darwin's evolutionary adaptation.
We even took Hemingway's iceberg theory and Proust's involuntary memory and applied them directly to the nervous system.
And we arrived at Kinexa Formation, which you can explore more at formation.kinexa.ai.
They've taken the chaotic brilliance of human genius across 50 centuries and forged it into an analytical instrument for profound physical mastery.
Proving that human movement is a staggering blend of geometry, invisible psychology, and cellular memory. It proves we are never just moving.
We really aren't.
So to you, listening to this right now, think back to our opening thought. The next time you reach for that cup of coffee, or you go for a jog, or just walk across a room to shake someone's hand.
You're not just firing muscles.
No, you are executing a highly complex, historically profound work of art. And the velocity, posture, and rhythm of that art is being heavily directed by an unconscious mind that remembers everything you've ever experienced.
Which leaves us with a rather provocative question to mull over long after this discussion ends.
Let's hear it.
If every physical gesture is indeed governed by the unconscious, as Freud and Pollock believed, and if technology like Connexa can now mathematically decode the hidden layers of those movements in real time,
Right.
what secrets are your everyday, casual movements already broadcasting to the world about your inner emotional state, completely without your permission?